Thank you. Thanks everybody for coming. Apologies for the late start. Just had to take a urgent call, so I do apologise for that. Can I thank everybody for attending today and welcome the extraordinary meeting of the Strategy and Resources Policy Committee. The meeting today is open to the public. However, the report at item 7 on the agenda, Family Hubs and the Start for Life programme, is a confidential document and is subject to the government embargo, which is therefore not available to the public or press. When we get to that item of business, we will need to ask members of the public and press to kindly leave. I don't think we ever got any, so not parts, but we may have to leave the broadcast. We have received no questions from the members of the public by the deadline of 9 AM on Friday, 3rd of February. And please can I request that you switch your mobile phones and other equipment to silent so as not to disturb the meeting and the conduct of the meeting. There's no fire test planned for today. I think we all know the procedure, but just to be, just for clarity, please follow instruction from the staff, and the meeting point is in Tudor Square. Can I firstly introduce myself? My name is Councillor Terry Fox. I'm the leader of the council and councillor for Manor Castle Ward. I'll ask members of the committee and officers to introduce themselves as we go along. So I'll start with Richard. Is that okay, Richard?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Richard Williams, member of Stannington Ward.
Richard Martin.
Hi, yeah, I'm Councillor Martin Smith, Councillor for Dawn and Totley Ward and Chair of the Economic Development Committee.
Thanks, Martin. Joe.
Hi, I'm Councillor Joe Otton, Chair of Waston Street Scene Committee and member for Dawn and Totley.
Thanks, Joe. Douglas.
Yep, Douglas Johnson, Chair of the Housing Policy Committee and member for City Ward.
Thanks, Douglas. Julie.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councillor Julie Grocutt, member for Stocksbridge Upper Ward. I'm Deputy Chair of this meeting, the Deputy Leader of the Council and the Co-Chair of Transport, Regen and Climate Policy Committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Brian.
Councillor Brian Lodge, member for Burley Ward and Co-Chair of Finance Subcommittee.
Thanks. Kate.
Kate Joseph, Chief Executive.
James.
James Anderson, Director of Policy Performance and Communications.
David.
David Hollis, Interim Director of Legal and Governance.
Paul.
Sorry, Chair. Paul Robinson, Democratic Services.
Thanks, Paul. Tony.
Tony Kirkham, Interim Director of Finance.
Thanks, everybody, and I'll get presenting officers to introduce themselves when we start presenting. Apologies for absence. I've got apologies from Councillors Argenzio, Dawn Dale and Paul Wood and Mick Rooney. Thank you.
Shafak Mohammed.
Thanks, John. Shafak Mohammed. Item 3, as referred above, members of the public and press will be asked to leave meeting before item 7 on the agenda is discussed. Item 4, can I ask if there's any declarations of interest from members? No, thank you very much. Item 5, as we've said, we've received no public questions or petitions on this. Item 6, thanks ever so much. Can I ask Janet to present and introduce herself? Thank you, Janet. And then I'll ask, after that, I will ask the Chair of the Housing Committee, Councillor Douglas Johnson, to make his remarks. Thanks ever so much.
Good afternoon. I am Janet Sharp and I'm the Director of Housing for the Housing and Neighbourhood Services. What we'd like to do is to do a brief summary of the review of the Housing Revenue Account, the Housing Revenue Account Business Plan, and also to present for your approval to take this report forward through to full council. So what we'd like to do is just briefly explain what the Housing Revenue Account Business Plan is. It is a ring-fenced account that is managed by the council. Its income that comes in to this account is made up largely from council rents, from around 39,000 council properties, and also other income that comes in through some old charges, service charges, other income to the council, and also leaseholder contributions. We're also responsible for the management of round about 3,000 leasehold properties. So In terms of the business plan sets out a number of key issues, as you will have seen from the summary report. We always look at the achievements we've made in year in terms of delivering of key services, that's tenancy services, that's repair services, those services that support the delivery of tenant services from many other teams across the council that enable us to deliver those services, and also our repairs service, and also quite a significant housing capital investment programme to improve the quality of existing stock and new supply. So it is probably one of the largest, if you call accounts that the council manages. It is ring-fenced in law, and it can only fund certain activities that supports the delivery of our tenants' homes and tenant services. In terms of its commitments, you will see from the financial appendix that it's broken down into existing borrowing from historic debt that we have taken forward, and also some of the key services. And I think in terms, it also looks at the national and local policy context. So as part of formulating the business plan, we work on an in-year, a future year, in this instance is 23-24. We also look at having a 5-year programme, both from revenue and investment. So we're really clear on how we are going to deliver the services over a long term, and also a 30-year programme. And we're required to ensure that each year the Housing Revenue Account business plan balances. And it has to live within its means with the income that it receives. So we also work really closely, both with our staff, people who deliver key services, but also our tenants. And tenants at the heart of the HRA business plan, in terms of making sure that the services we are providing meet the needs of tenants, but also tenants have an active role in shaping services, as does many other parts of the council, so that we make sure that we are delivering in line with their priorities. So this year has been quite a difficult year, as it has been for all council budgets and also that of other housing providers across the country, in terms of dealing with our cost of living, where inflation is very high at the moment, where our construction inflation is very high, and also we've got the introduction of quite a number of national and local policy, and particularly wider regulation of the housing sector. We've also been working closely with the government team and officials in terms of what the rent standard will be for 23-24, and that has recently been confirmed, that guidance is recommending that rents are set at 7%. That is less than the inflation on costs that we are delivering through the business plan, but also recognises that setting a rent higher than 7% would have had significant impact on many of our tenants. So the report details the priorities, the achievements that we've made during 22-23. It also talks through the priorities for 23-24. And looking at, both the income and the likely costs in the business plan, aligning that with not also housing priorities, but also the wider ambitions for the council for housing, it is being clear that, the income is not matching what our pressures are within the council. So you will see in the appendix in section 5.2 that there have been a number of significant pressures And these are detailed in the appendix, being at 22.8 million. And there are quite a number of pressures. We've seen, obviously, the increase in volumes for our repair service as it transforms its services. We have also receiving unprecedented numbers of disrepair claims, which we are managing. Our costs for day-to-day delivery of services are increasing. And also, you know, general increases on utility bills and lots of other areas, which means that we've had to look very carefully at what is included and what is funded from the housing revenue account in terms of being able to balance that account for 23-24. And in the appendix, you will see on section 5.7 that I'm working closely both with our tenant scrutiny panel as well as our committee members. We have worked through a considerable number of options for making savings in 23-24 that then also will be carried forward into future years to ensure that we can balance the business plan whilst also making sure that we are meeting our commitments for our tenants to improve the quality of existing homes, which is a key priority for many tenants, to tackling issues at a local level and working closely with other services at a local level to make sure our tenants are supported, but also not only our homes but our neighbourhoods, they're living in clean, safe areas, and also you know, that they can be living in communities to be proud of. And also to make sure that, you know, that we will have the resources in place to be able to deliver those services on a day-to-day basis. One of the things that we have is needed to look carefully at both the increasing costs of delivery of services, and that also includes the repair services, and it is clear that we need to spend more money through the Housing Capital Investment Programme to improve the quality of our homes, which in turn should enable our repair service to be targeting at those absolutely essential day-to-day repairs going forward. We also have, you will see in the report, maintained a commitment to our stock increase programme. And that obviously has always been a priority for the HRA business plan for many years. So the original budget is being maintained, but given how expensive it is now to be building new homes, it does mean that smaller numbers are being proposed, and they again have been worked through from the Housing Policy Committee since September in terms of what those estimated numbers may well be. But it's not just increasing cost of building new homes, we're also changing the types of homes through our stock increase programme. You know, we've got our first new integrated housing and care scheme that came, that opened this year in Buchanan Green, which is a step forward in improving the quality of older persons accommodation. We're introduced new temporary accommodation, which is in a much better quality than our current arrangements for people needing to live in emergency accommodation. And also to increase the supply of general needs, not just from direct build, but also from acquiring homes from developers, from the council's joint venture with Sheffield Housing Company and other developments. And certainly this week, we will be, our new shed ownership product has become live. And I think that's really exciting in terms of increasing different types of homes through our stock increase programme. So, but it does mean we've had to reprofile some of that spending and also to make sure that it is affordable and also we can deliver on the wide ambitions. So the report sets out a clear strategy, balanced business plan, making sure it balances over the 30-year period as well as 22, 23 and 24. It also makes sure that we're investing in our tenant services. We're also working with a whole range of tenants, not just through our existing partnership with our Taras, but also through, you know, many thousands of visits that services attend to in tenants' homes, and seek the views of those tenants. Alongside, we're getting increased hits through our social media, through Facebook, and a whole range of platforms that are now influencing what tenants want to see in terms of the services we deliver and the investment that they want to see in their homes. And we're also wanting to increase the performance and accelerate improving energy efficiency in our homes. We've still got just over 6,000 homes that are not at EPCC, and so there is huge programmes of activity to make sure by 2030 all homes are at EPCC, and there will also be a roadmap of what will need to be undertaken to reach net zero, if that is possible for all archetypes. And I think working closely, you know, with local councillors and also through Housing Policy Committee, I think we've seen some fantastic achievements in terms of the amount of external funding we have been able to bring in to improve energy efficiency in homes, which is fantastic news, and we hope that that will continue. So it is a balanced business plan. It sets out its aims and ambitions, how we can live within our means in terms of the income that comes into the business plan, to listen to a whole range of feedback, not only from tenants, but from staff, and also from whole members of the Housing Committee and local councillors to shape it. Included in the appendix is the set out revenue and capital budgets for 23-24 and beyond. So we have that 5-year funding and also budget horizon. We always have to review that each and every year, because like this year, you know, we are working in unprecedented times with increasing in costs to make sure that we can live within our means. And it also sets out the 5-year capital investment programme. The plan for the capital investment programme, given how critical it is now to improve the quality of homes, is that will be broken down by LAC areas. And one of the things that we will be doing is working very closely with those LAC chairs, breaking down the investment programme, because I'm sure they will want to have oversight as well of capital programme delivery in those local areas. And also at Appendix D, it sets out what the impact will be of increasing rents by 7%. You know, it is a very difficult time for everyone in the city, but particularly, obviously, our council tenancies in terms of increasing rents. Alongside the increase in rents, we are also increasing our hardship fund, and also have done huge amounts of work working with the cost of living group and other organisations, so we can join up financial support to help our tenants as well as other citizens in the city. So I hope the report, which is quite extensive, has been helpful. I hope it provides a useful summary of the housing revenue account and its business plan over 1 year and 30 years. The report is recommending rents are set at 7%. However, obviously pleased to present the business plan here today, and also if you are happy with that proposal and the detail in the report, that can go forward for submission to the council's full council meeting later on this month. Happy to pick up any questions, Chair.
Thanks, Janet. Douglas, do you just want to give us a reflection within the committee?
Yeah, happy to do that, Chair, thanks. The Housing Committee met last Thursday, and I just wanted to say a few words really on behalf, speaking as chair of the committee there, I think it's fair to say, first of all, Janet used the word unprecedented. The committee's had to deal with savings to be found of £23 million in a year, and that is a huge blow to the service, reflected by a number of factors, but it just indicates the scale of the challenge there. So I think it's also fair to say that I just want to put on the record some gratitude to everyone who's been involved in that process. It's been a big process, so looking in particular at the staff who've gone through this, through every department, and the unions working with them, and Janet's team. Also thank all the tenants through various mechanisms and their inputs and discussions with them. And then finally the committee. It's fair to say that the Housing Policy Committee has risen to the challenge. We've worked through a lot of these details, thrashed them out in quite extensive discussions where we have tried to get to the bottom of what we would be acceptable, possibly through gritted teeth, what wouldn't, how proposals can be changed so as to reach a workable balance and come up with the best solution we can. And I have to say, it is pleasing to see us work cross-party. Pleased to see that the resolution at last week's committee was unanimous. So we did all get in there. So credit to that, and I say it is actually very pleasing to work with the people on my committee, and I'm just consider myself quite lucky there to have people on that committee that can work with. The resolution so in putting this housing revenue account and business plan forward, so the committee also resolved that this committee today considers the matters that we discussed and will set out in paragraph C of the resolution above. And in paragraph C requests that the following matters be considered by this committee today when approving the HRI business plan. So the four factors: one is maintaining the stock increase programme. Number two is looking again how to invest in order to decrease the repairs bill. Number three is looking at the possibility of further investment into retrofitting. And number four, finally, is increasing tenant involvement, exploring the option of tenant-led local housing advisory panels and reporting arrangements within the LACs. And I think those are four sensible suggestions for us all to look at, because a very good summary of a lot of the work that's been going on over the course of the year. So, as I mentioned, thanks to all the colleagues involved there. That's what's being put forward. Requesting this committee considers those. Doesn't come up with a magic answer of where we get the extra millions from that we'd all like to see, but I felt we need to report back from the Housing Committee to the committee today. Thanks.
Thanks, Douglas. Okay, we're open to questions, comments. Is there any kind of question? Joe?
Thank you, Chair. So, just following on from that final point, can I ask what the options are? I mean, obviously the stock increase programme is maintained in cash, but not in numbers, and we're facing, housing, construction materials inflation of 27%. So that obviously results in a reduced number. Can I ask what options we have to maintain the programme in numbers? That's fine, fund effectively an extra 800 houses.
Yeah, yes, certainly. I think in terms, you've touched on it, Councillor Otten, in terms of a significant increase in construction costs, and that is playing out where we are directly building. It's also obviously an issue that's been faced by many developers as well elsewhere. So one of the things that we are doing, we're also buying off plan, and they seem to be slightly better in terms of value, particularly with the main house builders, the big volume house builders. And we're also continuing to buy, market acquisitions, and people who come to the council, and are asking us. So I think we do need to let the construction market stabilise a little bit, would be my view, whilst also making sure that we keep it under regular review. So we're obviously building, homes when we can get obviously sensible prices, but also from the commitments that we have made. Huge amounts of work is taking place, particularly working closely with colleagues in the City Futures portfolio in terms of getting additional grants, money from obviously the South Yorkshire MCA for abnormal costs, and to actually maintain the programme as far. But certainly, obviously, one of the things that we are recommending in the report is that we continually review this programme to make sure inflation is increasing significant. We're also working with other local authorities to see how their investment and delivery programmes are going, to see if there is any learning from the way they're approaching direct build in their own areas. And also, hopefully, to make sure that we are not bringing forward build programmes that are so expensive that puts significant risks on the business plan. And I think it is worth remembering that, anything there is a general needs new build is subject to right to buy, and that puts increased pressure. But we are, in our stock increase, have always had a programme that is balanced between specialist homes and between general needs. So where it is sensible to take forward and deliver in line with our budget estimates, but obviously if we come across schemes and sites that are disproportionately expensive, then we have to look at those as individuals, projects, to make sure we are not increasing the risk beyond what we're already budgeting for in the business plan.
I mean, thank you for that. I mean, it's a full answer and it's useful sort of summary of the challenges we're facing. But going back to my question, the kind of two little answers to how we get more numbers. One was buy more off plan, which I mean I'm slightly nervous about, because presumably if you buy something off plan, that's a unit of housing that's not available elsewhere on the general market, and you're not increasing the supply of housing overall. You're just increasing the supply of council housing at the cost of other forms of housing. So that in a sense doesn't contribute in the same way to overall housing supply. And the other one you said was not to spend on the really expensive projects, which I think I hope we all can do it and do our house building in a way that brings value for money. But let me rephrase the question a little bit more bluntly, I suppose, in that if we were to pay for an extra 800 houses, how would what options are there for finding the money to do that?
Right, yeah. So sorry if I wasn't clear. Our stock increase has always had a balance between acquisitions and direct build. Always has done right from the start, really, which is a good thing, because then we can mix and match between the programme. If we were to increase the numbers presently based on present estimates, is that would increase the budget for the stock increase programme by round about 200 million. So to do that, we haven't got 200 million, and so that would require to use some of the borrowing headroom in the HRA to borrow that money. But it's like all borrowing, we would have to service the debt. So it is the servicing of the debt that gives a significant challenge to the business plan, as well as obviously the risk of right to buy for some property types. So looking at my finance colleagues here in the room, if we were to borrow 200 million at some stage during the current window of the stock increase programme, I advise that would cost us in the region of £10 million per year. So you can see within the business plan that budgets are very tight in terms of the balance between, we're recommending reductions, obviously, across the board in terms of services. Also, we are working through the current pressures being faced by the repair service, and also we need to invest in the quality of our existing stock as well as new supply. If we don't do that, then the cost for our repair service and the volumes will increase significantly. So that is a way, obviously, to get that under control. The other thing is, as you will have seen, in the news, We've got a number of new regulators now of housing. We've got HSE for the fire and building safety regulator, and that again is requiring us to do more than we have been doing in terms of increasing the safety for our residents, particularly in high-rise and high-risk buildings. The new social housing regulator, so obviously one of the things we must make sure that we are meeting the regulatory standards. And also, you know, recently with the unfortunate death of the young boy in the country, there is a greater focus on damp and mould. And as you can see from the report, obviously I'm chairing the damp and mould task force, and that will be looking at visiting each property to make sure, with my stock condition surveyors, that we understand the condition of homes and where we have the prevalence of damp and mould. So one of the things that we are recommending is that we continue with the stock increase programme. That has always been a political commitment. It's always been an ambition for our tenants. And also we need to see that new supply because we have unprecedented demand in council housing. Whilst also keeping it under review, and if we can do more and if we can get more external grant funding, if we can make it work better, then year on year we will keep it under review, and if we can increase numbers. The other positive thing is that you know, we are building up and we have some fantastic relationships with housing associations in the city, and particularly those who are developing housing associations. And they themselves have made a commitment to increase the supply of new homes. So although, you know, we're in that place where we want to continue with our programme, but we know the profile of delivery may change, we are also working close with housing associations because we want to encourage them to increase supply. And together, we should be able to bring forward significant affordable housing in the city, which is absolutely needed.
I mean, thank you. You go on to a number of issues about the kind of quality of the housing stock, and I appreciate that. I was meaning to come to that a little bit later, because obviously it's another point that have been asked to look at by the Housing Committee. Is, well, retrofitting is one aspect of the quality, isn't it? And also the invest to avoid repairs down the line is another aspect of, you know, investing in quality. And we've been asked to look at all these things. But just going back to the idea of spending an extra 200 million on housing, and therefore you know, incurring a borrowing of 10 million a year to service that, is that actually an option? I mean, I'm conscious that there is I don't have the number in front of me, a revenue contribution to capital in the housing revenue account, that perhaps could that be repurposed to service a debt, and therefore you're not getting more houses in total, but you're bringing potentially a number of houses forward in time, aren't you, if you do that? Is that an option?
There are many options, but one of the things I would say is some of the things around areas like the condition of our property. If we allow the condition of our properties to deteriorate, then it will simply increase the repairs budget. There is a direct relationship between improving the quality of homes and obviously the repairs budget. If we increase and get our homes in better condition, then we should see the repairs budget reducing. But obviously if we don't invest in properties, then we will see it increasing. And I think so, yes, you could look at a number of areas to service the debt, but at this moment in time my recommendation would be that we don't do that, and that is because I think we need to honour the commitments of the stock increase programme. We need to you know, yes, reprofile, but also we are still delivering quite a significant programme, both for stock increase programme, nearly 300 million over the next 5 years. In the same way, we're delivering over 300 million in existing stock through capital. That is still quite a lot of money. Whilst also we hope that both inflation, you know, the supply chain, and particularly construction inflation may well ease over a period, but we will have to keep that under review and make sure that bears out. But as you can see from the business plan, You know, it's very tight. It's either borrowing, services, or investment.
I mean, thank you for that. I mean, the reason I'm labouring the point is because we've been asked by the Housing Committee to consider ways of maintaining the numbers. So I appreciate your recommendation. I accept your recommendation is what it is, and I just want to explain why I'm labouring the point. I realise I've also dominated the conversation a bit. I'm happy to leave the floor for other members, but can I leave hanging the question of procedurally how we go about doing this, considering what we've been asked to consider, in time that we can then have a proposal that comes to full council. Thank you.
And just to confirm, Joe, we are doing the modelling. We are looking at different models, and if any of those models enables us to increase the stock increase programme, I don't think there is anyone in the room that wouldn't want to take advantage of that.
Thanks, Janet. And that's for the matter for us to consider, Joe. But obviously, amendments will go to full council or at full council, and it will be for the financial team and the housing team to make sure that those are within the guidelines of this council. But I'll take other members and I'll raise some points in my questions and comments. It may address your points, and we'll come back to them. So if I give the floor to other people, John, we'll come back to that. But I have a long list of questions and comments as well. So as you would expect, Marty.
Sorry, Chair, thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Janet. Not easy giving us a set of numbers that, let's be honest, we'd prefer if they were different. Councillor Otton's asked some of the questions I was going to ask, but I'll start off with a different one. So the 7% rent increase is something I'm sure no councillors in here, given the cost of living crisis, would want to do. How does that compare with other increases that are being proposed either in South Yorkshire or nationally? Are we an outlier, or are we in the pack? How does that compare, please? And I've got another question afterwards, if I may.
Yes, thank you. Obviously, I work with lots of other housing directors up and down the country, and we are also affiliated to a number of consortiums. We've all worked together through this. The vast majority that I have seen are setting rents at 7%. And that also includes, housing associations as well. There will be handfuls of local authorities that will set a rent increase line. However, I would like to just refer that if 7%, given our costs are much higher than 7% in terms of the increase that we're bearing, is that it just makes the need for more savings greater if we do not set the rent at least 7%. One of the things that we have put in place, because it's really difficult for tenants, it's not just rent, it's food, it is cost of living, it's heating bills, it's lots of different things that is affecting our tenants, which is why we have increased the hardship fund. But also we do a huge amount of work in terms of supporting our tenants. 3/4 of our tenants are on benefits, and that does not mean that they are not suffering from hardship, and quite the reverse. But it also means that we will support them to make sure they get the maximum amount of benefits and any other help and support that is out there, but also increasing the hardship funds from other families that are also struggling with bills. Many people are on that threshold where they don't quite qualify for benefits, but they're on very low incomes. And also, so we've increased the hardship fund, and that's proved very successfully, but also triaging with lots of other funds that are available. And that's where the work of the cost of living council meeting and group has looked at working alongside voluntary and community sector services, as well as other hardship and support funds within the council, to make sure we are triaging support. We have a good track record of supporting people with hardship. This is going to be a difficult year, but one of the things that I feel assured by is that we have got lots of sort of support. We reach out to many tenants who we know will find it hard. And also to make sure they know that support is in place to help and support those individuals. And that also includes is working closely with the utilities, with hardship support schemes and lots of other organisations to make sure we maximise support for many vulnerable tenants and residents in the city.
Thanks, it's a very comprehensive answer. The other one is just a quick one, and forgive me, I'm not an expert on the HRA and what have you, but the stock increase programme, which obviously is a big issue, over what time scale is that programme? Is it 5 years, 10 years, or what? When we talk about that, we'd all like another 800 homes. Over what period of time is that, please?
The current programme for the stock increase programme would end round about 28, 29. But one of the things in terms of that programme is it can be adjusted, you know, so obviously we work through that, and if it needs to take a little bit longer, if it needs to, you know, if we get opportunities and it's delivered a little bit earlier, then that's what we do as part of the annual review of that programme.
So there is no like fixed time scale that we have to hit on. We would all like to hit it as soon as possible, but there's no fixed timetable on that.
It peaks over the next 2 years, and I think that's where the highest costs are. But since the start of the stock increase programme, it has adjusted. It has adjusted. You know, if we feel that we'll need a little bit of time to deliver, you know, the units per year. And also, so one of the things that we are recommending is that we look at that profile. Some of that is naturally slipping because it's really difficult in the construction sector at the moment. And we re-look at get the realistic profile, but also look, you know, year on year to see if actually it needs to take a little bit longer, or we can bring it back on track, you know, in 2 or 3 years, where that is possible.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. Douglas?
Thanks. I put my hand up first of all because I was just wanted Janet to get to the figures. So the bottom line is we want an extra £200 million that to keep the stock increase programme back to where it was, and that would cost an estimated £10 million a year. So that is really the choice there. So just in the context of the £23 million that we've had to make in savings, there wasn't much appetite for adding another £10 million onto that. But I mean, just reflecting on the whole point about the stock increase programme is that actually the programme itself hasn't gone away. There's still the list of sites in the pipeline that are there, ready to be built. And it does depend on many things over that timescale that Martin's just asked about. And I was just thinking about, it depends a lot on, obviously, how well the housing revenue account performs over the course of the next year. And part of the recommendation from the Housing Policy Committee last week was to accept that once the HRA is set, and over the course of the year, it's Housing Committee that has the job of monitoring the ongoing work and performance of that. But of course, we've also got the ongoing dialogue with organisations like Homes England, as well as the Combined Authority, that may bring in more money. They ought to be putting more money into the good sort of housing that we need in Sheffield. And of course, we are talking about the need for not just any old housing, but the right housing in the right place. Overall, there's not really a shortage of housing in Sheffield, but there is a shortage of the right housing in the right place and how it's used. And that's something that's really important there. And then, of course, we've got the contribution. In fact, the local plan is out for consultation now. It's all about how we use our levers as a council to make sure that there's more of that right accommodation coming forward. So in that context, the stock increase programme is an ongoing piece of work, I guess, that's continually going to be under review. And, because I think the one thing that we're all clear about is we just want to see more of the good stuff all the time. I just want to make a brief point on the rent increase. I mean, you've got to bear in mind that council tenants this year are going to have a below inflation increase. And just want to make the point as well, that the main beneficiary of the rent cap that's imposed us to limit the rent increase to 7%, which as I said is below inflation, the main beneficiary is central government through not paying out the additional benefits that would otherwise be paid, which would otherwise be a useful source of money coming into the local economy and supporting housing in Sheffield.
Thanks. So I'll take that as comment, not rather a question. Okay. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I've got a number of questions and picking up things from the report. The report identifies that the average market value of social housing dwelling in Sheffield, this is the straight wording, as at 31st of March was £98,000, rounded up to the nearest £500. The average existing value use of social housing, based on its current use, is 40,500. Yeah. So if we're talking 200 million for 800 new properties, as a rough calculation, that's £250,000 per property. Where's that fit in against the current values and things in there? Because it seems to be a huge amount of money. Is it a huge difference from round it up to £100,000 to £250,000?
It is, and certainly the tenders that are coming forward are quite significant on the cost of units, and you know, and disproportionately for, which is what is naturally slowing down some of the new builds on the stock increase programme, to ensure obviously that we are getting best value and we are building at the right time. One of the things, as Douglas has said, is we are also reaching out to Homes England and the South Yorkshire MCA for external grant support, but the cost of building new homes is increasing significantly. One of the things that the Housing Policy Committee have asked me to bring forward a report, and I will be working with Kerry Bollington from the Housing Growth team and Sean McLean in terms of what the current prices are looking like, and that is something that the Housing Policy Committee have asked for that report. So one of the things that we are doing, and we will always do, is think, well, actually, can we get units any other way as well to increase the supply in the short term, until to see if the construction market will subside a little bit. It's not just that we are building on difficult sites. They are quite difficult, some of the sites. The abnormal's very expensive, which is why we're reaching out obviously for grant support, and we've done really well in securing that external grant support. And also, the regulations now in terms of the standards that we need to build in, and we are building larger properties because that future proofs for our tenants in terms of, what we need in terms of the ramps, but all of that is increasing costs. But also what you always see at in times like this is that contractors will also price in risk because the market is so uncertain. And what we need to do is take a sensible approach about how we bring new build forward, and also making sure our costs can be contained within the original budgets. But also I think that, if we, given that, new build homes are subject to right to buy, so if they are not exempt, then that actually puts additional risks on the business plan.
Yeah, if I can, Chair, that being the case, you say we try and acquire properties as well. The average house price in Sheffield on the open market is not £250,000. So would it not make a better way of doing things then to acquire more properties, existing properties, rather than looking at new build? It fits into mixed tenure on estates, which is what we've always been trying to do for a number of years now. But it would make I don't know, I may be oversimplifying things, to look at it as a better investment to purchase. Now, I know that's not helping with the additional properties that we need in Sheffield overall, but this is looking at increasing council housing stock. And, you know, I can go around in the area of Sheffield I live, in the ward I live, and £250,000 is not the average price of a house there, in quite a, you know, reasonable residential area and things. So I just wonder how we've sort of squaring that off. The other thing is then, if we're talking of saying £200 million for 800 new properties, over how many years are we talking of that? If we're saying borrowing, what's the sort of time for that? If you're talking of saying 10 million a year borrowing costs.
So in terms of our model, we have a mixed programme between acquisitions and obviously new supply. The new supply enables us to be building the types that we haven't got. You know, if we were just doing straight acquisitions, we wouldn't have built our new older persons independent living scheme. We wouldn't be building temporary accommodation that we absolutely desperately need.
It's a mix.
So it is a mixed. But I think we have a model that we've designed in terms of being able to not only check value for money, but also to estimate the borrowing period and the payback period. So for sort of general need, we work on that it's going to be 30 years, give or take a small percentage either side. And also for our specialist accommodation, presently, where it is a bit more expensive, but obviously it's also exempt from right to buy, it's probably running at about 40 years plus. So what that means is each and every year until, you know, at some part of it you will pay back just the interest, then you will start be paying interest and principal. And that debt is with you throughout the life of the business plan until that pays itself off. The more something costs, the longer it will take, and also the higher that cost will be in year in terms of how much you are borrowing. So one of the things that the Housing Policy Committee, as with the recommendations from last week, want to look in some detail how that works. So, you know, so we run some examples, but also look in terms of what that borrowing and what else we would need to save to be able to service that debt, or if there are other models that we could look at that would reduce the upfront capital cost to increase in the supply of those new homes. That could be long leases, that could be a whole range of things. So one of the things that may take us a few weeks to do, but one of the things that we are keen to do is to do that detailed work and then obviously bring that back for a further discussion in terms of other options we could look at to increase the supply, whilst also working really closely with housing association partners who are also looking at different ways to try and increase their supply of affordable housing.
I'm trying to understand over how many years, because it's 200 million at 10 million per annum. Over, is that 30, based on 30 year?
It's until, you've paid it off and paid off your principal.
Right. And can I, what's the capital? I'm breaking it down rather than looking at the whole thing, taking it down. If you are a homeowner and you want to do some work, you can borrow against the value of your property.
Yeah.
So expanding that, what's the value of our housing stock, and do we have the ability to borrow against that, against the value of the overall housing stock, if that is a way to look at funding? Because we've arrived at a figure that says 3,000 new homes that we need to increase the council's stock. So a lot of time and effort has gone into achieve that. It just seems a bit arbitrary to sort of look and say, well, you know, we need to drop that. Now, if that's what we need, then realistically what we ought to be doing is looking at ways to achieve that rather than dropping that number down, because we're never going to, I mean, we all know the problems with the council housing list. So it's almost like the end justifies the means by dropping down the numbers because that's what we can afford. But what we ought to be doing, I'd suggest, is that we need to be looking at if there are innovative ways, and Tony's going to get nervous now looking over here, but if there are different ways of doing it that we can, you know, is it capitalisation, or is it like remortgage it or whatever, to achieve that number? Because we seem to be starting the wrong way round. If that's the number of properties that we've identified we need, then that's what we should be working to achieve, rather than we've had to scale down, if that makes sense.
What we've done for the report is look from the original budget that was set for the stock increase for the 3,100 of 354 million, and obviously anything that we get in terms of like grant goes above that. And then what we've tried to do, look at the whole range of sites, acquisitions and the mix in terms of the number of units under the current prices that we will be able to deliver on. One of the things that we don't want to do is obviously people working on schemes and projects that are not going to come forward over the next few years, rather than looking at for innovative solutions of how we can increase additional income to come into the business plan that enable us to go further. So it is it. So the report is setting out, you know, but also that we've changed the mix. So we've changed the mix. So, you know, so we're clear what we can deliver within that funding envelope. But this business plan is reviewed every year, and every year we will review the position with the stock increase programme. Government grants might increase, the cost of building might reduce. There might be further grants, towards energy efficiency or other things that going into those properties that we can apply for that reduce the cost. So one of the things that we would always do is review the capital programme each and every year, and if we can go further. We have a fantastic track record in Sheffield at securing money in all sorts of different ways. I've been quite innovative, whether it's applying for grants for ground source heat pumps or off utilities or through Homes England or through South Yorkshire. We have a fantastic track record, so we don't want to lose any of that. But what we also want to do is make sure that we can deliver within the envelope that we've got available to us, but then just keep it under review. And if the environment changes and we can do far more, then let's do far more. But at the moment, in terms of the business plan and actually making sure we've got a balanced position, is to look at what money we can afford and what money we can afford to borrow, and the service of that debt to be able to balance the business plan.
If I may, Chair, can we borrow against the value of the stock? Is a simple question, really. At what level, what gearing would it be, and that sort of level? Because I think, I go back to the comment I made, we seem to, if we've identified that's the number of properties that we need, it seems to be going the wrong way around, because we're now saying, well, we don't need that number of properties. We still need that number of properties, so we just need to find a way to deliver that number of properties. I'll leave it after that, Chair.
Thanks, Brian. Julie?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Janet, and everyone who's put some work into this report. And we all know it's not easy, and we all know that we're in a situation that we don't want to be in. And I just want to build on from the points that Brian's made, really, and just put the human element into this, because I think it's really important that we actually do that. And we know that we have got unprecedented demand. We know that we don't have the right buildings in the right places for the right people, because notwithstanding casework I get about repairs, I also get about people not living in the properties type of property they want to live in the part of the city that they want to be in. So we all know and understand that there is a real lot of work to do here. But I think, as Brian has said, we have got, we know we need 3,000 houses. So the questions for me are, if we don't have that many houses this coming year, how many people are we going to have left in temporary accommodation? How long have people who are in temporary accommodation been there already who are waiting? How many people are we going to have on the waiting list? How long have those people been waiting on the waiting list? Because at the end of the day, people have a right to have a decent home, and it's our responsibility as a council to provide those homes to everyone, to make sure that they have decent homes in a safe place where they can feel secure and have a good quality of life. So I think Brian pressing on the points that he's been pressing on is absolutely right, because we should leave no stone unturned to find the funding to provide the number of homes that we need for this city. And we really do, for me, as a matter of urgency, need to do that work. And so I would just like to understand, if we don't do it and we go with the numbers that are suggested, how many people is that going to leave us for this next 12 months, struggling in temporary accommodation, still waiting on the council housing list because we can't provide them with the home that they deserve. And I know that's difficult, but that's the reality of the situation that we're in. And I think as councillors, we all need to understand the consequences of the decisions that we make. Thank you.
Yes, certainly. You're absolutely right, we have unprecedented demand. So at any one time, we've got about 500 mixture of families and individuals in temporary and emergency accommodation. And that's why, as part of the stock increase programme, we're looking at increasing the numbers of temporary accommodation through that programme, and we're also buying off plan, and we're doing a whole range of things to increase the supply. We also know that because there is a lack of affordable housing, is that the pace of our quittings is reducing because it's difficult for people to move on. And I'll give you a snapshot for the rehousing service. We have something like 2,900 bids a week that come into that service. We have about 70 of our own properties that are like for letting. And then obviously we've got small numbers obviously from housing associations. So we're increasingly dependent on the private rented sector. We are also procuring additional hotel accommodation. That was a further report that came to the Housing Policy Committee this week. And also one of the things that we are doing is prioritising the quits and the relets, or anything that comes through mutual exchanges, obviously, so that we are making sure that those in the greatest need have got a safe place to stay. We do have a good track record to make sure that we don't have the numbers that are sleeping rough on the sleep that other cities have, and that's still very low. But what that doesn't mean, as you've said, is that we have people in the right place, in the places that they want to live and have a successful life. So this is why the stock increase programme was so important, but it's also important to make sure that we don't have properties that are not habitable, and so this sat in our estates, not doing anything as well. So it is that balance. So we are building in terms of, good relationships, with the private rented sector. We already, obviously, as you know, manage a lot of the nominations for housing associations. So the more they can build, the easier it becomes. And then we've also got many households with a housing priority on top of the numbers in temporary accommodation. And presently we've just got over 1,000 of those. So they largely are people in some form of accommodation, not necessarily in council accommodation, but their home does not suit their needs. One of the things that we are doing is doing quite a lot of work on trend analysis to see what that is looking like, but also we do huge amounts of work to try and support families to avoid people and prevent people from becoming homelessness in the first and presenting as homelessness. So moving more to a prevention model rather than a reactive model and dealing obviously with the issues. But, we are hopeful that lots of other, people, lots of developers, will bring forward affordable housing, and that'll be a good thing for the city. So it's making sure that we can use whatever is available in the city for maximum effect, as well as trying to prevent people from having to move the home in the first place.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions for you, but thank you for the report. Very comprehensive. I've learned a lot from it. Just one observation or question is, in your discussions and pulling this all together with the committee, was consideration given to actually reining in new builds, given the horrendous cost of them, and actually focusing on clearing the void stock? Because to me, whether it's a void house becoming habitable again and a new build is the same net result.
Absolutely, and this has been a focus this year in terms of reducing the turnover time. So myself and Tom Smith, the Director of Direct Services who manages the repair service, we have done huge amounts of work, got an officer who's been dedicated to reducing the turnaround time for our void properties. That's working really well, and you will see in the business plan around reducing and getting us closer to where we should be in terms of void rent loss, back to the 1.5% was where we should be. We're a little bit away from that, but we've got a clear plan in place to do that. The other, if we can do that, we'll save about 2 or 3 million a year. So I'm confident that we will get there. Resources are being targeted to achieve that. The other area is disrepairs. So again, got a dedicated officer just trying to triage disrepairs. We are spending a lot of money, as David will say, both in terms of legal fees, but in terms of onaging. And ultimately, what our tenants want is for their property to be improved. So we have introduced a better triage system to actually reduce the numbers who feel the only way to resolve their repair issue is to actually engage a lawyer to do that. So again, the plan for 23-24 is try and get that down to its lowest possible level, but also give tenants a different way to raise their voice if they don't feel they've been listened to. And again, if we can do that, that will reduce the money that we're losing. If we reduce those costs, then it gives opportunities when we review the business plan next year to see if that's working. Then, does that make it a little bit easier? And then that will be brought forward for consideration.
Thank you. And the second question really is, I know that you'll be increasing the hardship fund quite considerably, and that's to help people who are paying the full, will take the full 7% increase. The 300,000 increase, what percentage of that 30% are you able to, do you think will be covered off on that?
I think it will probably be a fair few hundred. One of the things that we do, I think, is there is also other funds that so like we collect Yorkshire Water's bill, so they have obviously hardship scheme, and there is housing support fund, and there's a myriad of different schemes. Is to triage. We often find that some households need early support, and once they've got that early support, they then, although it's incredibly difficult, they do then tend to be able to afford their rent. And others are in and out of needing support. But one of the things that you will see from the report is we have both a strong track record in collecting rent, which is good, so in terms of the country, we've got some of the highest proportions of rent collection. But also, we've got some of the smallest numbers of eviction for arrears. And that is because of the triaging, the support. We know all of our tenants who will struggle to pay any increase. But we also have good relationships to identify those individuals early, look at what sort of support they need, look not necessarily just what the council can do, but what other partners in our communities can do to help and support individuals. And so far that's worked really well without us ranking up massive arrears. But also one of the issues is that, if our evictions increase substantially, it will just hit my general fund because they will present themselves as homeless, and I will still be dealing with those individuals. So it's so much more important to support people in a home wherever they are living, where they feel safe, where they feel comfortable, and where we can triage wider council support to help and support those people, then people, you know, not ignoring any advice, but also finding themselves in incredible hardship. And then we end up in a very painful legal eviction process. And we always will encourage people, don't worry, just come and speak to us and we can help you. And that's always the message from local councillors we have given, because the earlier we can support people, the better outcome for many of our families.
Briefly, just one follow-up, sorry. Just for my own clarity, the 30% of tenants who don't get support, is that about 8,000, 9,000 roughly? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard. No more questions. I'll a couple of comments and questions. First of all, can you pass on our congratulations to the staff? I mean, the amazing work they've done in reducing the voids from 80 days to 40 days is a credit, and obviously the diversity now that we've got in the stock, the shared ownership and delivering that up in Althorpe is a massive bonus for investment, and also the investment in Gleadless Valley, which is showing work through. And that, I think, is where my point of view is. This is about choices. And the last Labour-run administration chose to invest. And there is issues here, I think, to be brought out, Janet. So if I can just go through a number of points in the budget. So if you've mentioned today about the unprecedented pressure on this authority at the moment. Can you put that into numbers and into figures? You've already said we've got 500 at the moment in temporary. Some of that will be in temporary accommodation, some will be in hotels, etc. Can you tell us what the pressure is on now? Just for bidding of a council house, what that pressure is, just so that we know what the demand is around the city.
Yes, so in terms of pressures, obviously we have well over 20,000 people registering for housing, and we run obviously a CBL bidding process, and we are increasing the numbers of people with a housing priority. So each and every week we have thousands of people who are come into, who, we have our tenancy management officers who are visiting. So I think this year alone, visited 15,000 people in their homes. Again, huge amounts of support, but also being able to identify people who are at risk in their home and need our support. And we have obviously small numbers of properties available for us to relet, which is why obviously we both need the new supply, but also, many private rented landlords, some excellent landlords in our communities, where we are able to access their accommodation. But, there is significant pressure. There is pressure across our homeless services, and there are pressures, obviously, within the rehousing team in particular. So numbers who present themselves, we have round about 4,000 or 5,000 people who present themselves under the homeless every year, and obviously, we have peaks in that. Not all are given a duty, because we're able to support people to be able to go back to living with mum and dad, or maybe in the household where they're living, and better support them in their home, which is always better. But we are increasing in numbers, and the more people that maybe be in danger of losing their jobs, or maybe find themselves where they can't afford to live in a private rented home, that increases those numbers. So I can provide the week by week figures that come through, if that is something that you would like to see. But also, I think, credit to the staff who, both at the front line, preventing, people from needing to leave their home, and being able to manage on a day-to-day basis small numbers of homes at their disposal to be able to make sure we can match people successfully. But it is a challenge, but it's not just a Sheffield challenge. You know, this is happening in every town and city up and down the country, and we also do an awful lot of work with other local authorities and housing associations as well. So if there is any best practice, we can do that. But I think, you know, it's a difficult situation. The more the city can do to increase and more jobs, more income, it enables people to improve their choices of homes. And one of the things that we have trying to do, both through acquisitions, through the stock increase programme, through making sure that we are keeping our homes in a good state of repair, is to improve choices for people, and also to make sure people end up in the right place so that they're not living in Burngreave and the children are at school in Mosborough. You know, those things we have to take into consideration to try and provide the best possible outcome for people.
Thanks, Sharon.
I can provide the statistics if that would be helpful.
It certainly would, and I think you know, the 3,100 was not just plucked out of the air. It was about the needs of this city and the health of this city. Can I ask about, and that's why, as you quite rightly, other authorities are having the same. That's why in Bristol they're investing something like £1.8 billion in their stock increase programme. So I don't think we should be having our ambition reduced. I think we should be expanding our ambition. But anyway, so on the repairs and maintenance, I mean, we've seen just this, that is the biggest contributing factor in this budget going forward. And it's increased just this year by, I think, nearly £10 million a year, and we've seen we see a projected increase across. So that's telling us a trend here that if we don't invest in the stock, we're going to see an absolute increase in the repairs bill. Can you just tell us what, because we've heard about the cost of buying homes, there's also the cost of material to repair homes as well. So there's a chicken and egg situation. Can you just kind of tell us where that increase this year has come from and the improvements really in the repair service across the piece?
I think it's been a mixture of things. And I think there's been increase in volumes, people ringing for repairs and contacting the repair service. But also, I think we need to accelerate the housing capital programme. So what we have been doing is we've been placing roofs and soffits and gutter and electrical rewiring. Some of that is included in the report. Some areas and some archetypes need more than that. They need a package of solution. And that should reduce then, if we put that in place, that day-to-day pressure on the repair service for certain archetypes. So one of the things that we are doing is during the pandemic, we didn't do the full range of stock condition surveys because it was difficult to enter into people's properties. We are now getting that back on track, and that's certainly the best way to understand how many properties are suffering from damp and mould. So within 12 months, we'll have done a full stock condition survey, SRS survey and EPC. So we will truly understand. We have got quite robust asset management 30-year plan, which looks at life cycle replacement. And obviously, you know, for those of you who remember, it's been about 20 years since decent homes. So when we replace the heating systems, when we replace the windows, when we replace the kitchens, they're coming up for renewal. And again, one of the things we only want to do is replace elementals when they need replacing. So we've also got a fabric first. So we've also got some properties that are cold, and we need to address that cold. If we address the coldness, we'll probably address some of the damp and mould and other issues affecting those households, and also make sure that people have got really good quality heating systems. So I think as we've brought in the stock increase programme, we have reduced capital on existing stock, which has put some pressure on the repair service. And based on the analysis done by my asset management team, there are now certain archetypes when we need to prioritise investment in areas and bring that forward. And I think while we've got a general slowdown in some parts of the capital programme, is prioritise those areas and also now utilise. We're now getting some really good information from our repair surveys in terms of where they are regularly visiting on day-to-day repairs. And if we can tackle those areas first and bring forward those programmes, then that should give us, within a couple of years, a much better opportunity then to be able to look at how we're spending money. And some areas, like Leadless Valley, like areas like Lansdowne in Hanover, there's parts of the southeast of the city and in the northwest of the city that probably we need to take a different approach and a more packaged solution. And looking at the information, I think it's clear that if we target those areas and accelerate works in those areas, that should very much help Tom and the team to be able to deliver a day-to-day repair service rather than frequent visits to addressing things that need a packaged solution, a capital solution to improve the quality of those homes.
Thanks, Jan. So realistically, by investing in repairing our stock, that would reduce that kind of ongoing year-on-year increase in the repairs bill, which might give us more revenue to have a look at increasing the stock. So I do get that. And I would like to say about the Edward Street flats, the work that we're doing down there now with, and I know the local councillor Tom Hunt and the tenants have got together down there about doing a whole holistic approach fix on that, and not having to go back and just kind of patching repairs in. So there is an opportunity to reduce the pressure on repairs and give us a bit more headroom. On the other issue, can I just ask about the situation regarding the whole complexity of how we would do them, the retrofitting? Because my understanding is we've got a large number of our stock that we couldn't retrofit, and that's just the type, I think, Douglas raised. There's a number of homes that we've got, if you want, and you know, that's just the type of housing we are, and that some of that would the housing stock increase programme would be replacing some of that as well, in the request of assisting tenants to lower their heating bills, etc. Is there a number in the paper? I think I read about a third, but I mean, I focus on that. There's no number until we've done that stock condition. Is that right?
So what we've been doing is been retrofitting for a long time, stock, you know, so you will remember when we did the decent homes and we did huge amounts of retrofitting and put cladding and things like that. What we do have is a proportion that are non-traditional homes, and that's where you do an external wall cladding solution. And you will see, obviously, in the capital report, is that they've got the cavities, so you've got to go externally or inside the property to do that. One of the things that we would always do is look at the cost of that rather than dropping it down to the ground and building it back. And and to see which is the most cost-effective solution to do that. And certainly some archetypes require, you know, more like external ventilation as well as sort of thermal insulation and also other areas. I would say that we've also got some sundry properties, you know, so Victorian type, which are incredibly difficult and expensive, which is why obviously within the report it talks about, you know, reducing some of those, disposing of some of those, because they're disproportionately expensive, and we can use the revenues from that to improve or contribute to the new supply of homes. So I think most of our homes are at EPCC, which is the National Home Standard. And we have invested in insulation throughout the Decent Homes programme and presently now. But we do have some archetypes, and it's generally the non-traditional ones, where you know, they are of a non-traditional construction, which tend to be relatively small in number, but which require a costly retrofit solution. And what we do is, before we just embark on that, is we will say, what is the cost, the full cost of that? Would it be better, if it's a house, to take it down to its foundation level and build it back, which we have done? And or is it, can we do it through a retrofit approach? But given obviously half of our stock is flats and masonettes, we have had to have some design solution from flats and masonettes. But also, you know, to make sure it's one thing making them airtight, it's another thing making sure those properties can breathe and don't create other issues as well.
Thanks, Sarah.
But one of the things I can do when bring back, obviously, the asset management strategy, we can look at some of the most problematic archetypes, but they tend to be the non-traditional, but they are relatively small in number as terms of archetypes, but costly.
Thanks, Sarah. The last point I really want to make, until we get into the legals, which should be fun, but in the issues of this is, because we've now devolving down to lacks and in those lack areas around the city, when I was a lad and when you were, anyway, whatever, when I was a lad, we had housing management boards where tenants could really affect at a very local level what was happening in their patch, in their community, in their neighbourhood. And I understand from the housing committee they've asked to look at setting up housing advisory panels, where that real localised accountability, if you want, if you know, in some respects of you know, we are providing a service to our tenants, etc. In with that, and they've asked to look at that. So is that something that we're expecting? You know, I wouldn't expect any kind of change in the budget of that, but for the committee to look at how that would roll out. So is that something that you would endorse, where we get a real buy-in at local level of devolving down that accountability and powers?
Yes, certainly. So about a year or so ago, we did a lot of work and under the leadership of Councillor Wood in terms of community engagement strategy. And one of the things that did is that we needed to look at a different way of communicating. And, you know, a huge amount of work's taking place, more digital, more trying to really connect in the home with people and also use different mechanisms for supporting people. One of the things that we have in our engagement structures are housing forums. And they've been in the structures. I think during the pandemic, we didn't have those meetings, but increasingly, you know, we are really keen to be working really closely with the local area committees, and that's why we're trying to break down the activity at a local level, because I think any scrutiny and advice obviously is good. But one of the things that when we've reconfigured the neighbourhood boundaries, because as you know in the report, we're moving from 7 to 6, it provides an opportunity to get those housing forums or advisories, whatever we want to agree to call those meetings, to be re-established in the structure, you know, because I think that maybe is another way of people having a voice, and that close relationship maybe then between the likes, the policy committee and frontline officers. Maybe we're a good thing whilst we are having these challenging times. One of the things we just need to make sure is we're clear on their purpose and role.
Clarity is everything in them meetings, I understand that. Thank you, John. David, can I just ask in respect of what the committee's been asked to do and how we're constituted? Because I think there's a couple of lines in there which within the recommendations I think maybe borderline in some respects of our duty as a committee is kind of to submit this and to note, but I'll take advice from you.
That's right, Chair. I mean, the requirement in the Constitution is for this committee to oversee the production of the budget preparation and then to submit it to full council, where it will be approved either as it's submitted or subject to any amendments on the day by full council. because of that, we've got a slightly revised set of recommendations. I think all members have seen these. And it is recommended that Strategy and Resources Policy Committee approve for submission to the meeting of the City Council on the 20th of February 2023 the HRA Business Plan Report for 23-24 as set out in the financial appendix to this report, and the HRA Revenue Budget 2023-24 as set out in the financial appendix to this report. There are consequential amendments to the wordings on the recommendations from 3 onwards that just are grammatical, just so that they are being submitted up rather than being recommended.
Thank you. Members, George, you want to kind of just...
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I did say earlier I'd like to come back in. I mean, I think we've moved on. I mean, I had points on the other 3 recommendations from housing that had to invest in order to decrease repairs. I don't propose to repeat the whole conversation again, because I think we have moved on a little bit from that. Clearly, investing in repairs is something that our group has been very keen on for a long time. We've been very critical of the way that the repair service was insourced and was run for 5 years after the insourcing. We think that's the cause of a lot of our current problems. It is better, you know, it has turned the corner in terms of maybe not the numbers, but in terms of at least having everybody on the same paying conditions, which obviously is very welcome. So we have moved on slightly from that, but you know, the criticism of the past conduct remains. I don't have a problem with the revised recommendations. That's fine. My concern is that we've been asked as a committee to consider these points, and we've had a discussion, but when I ask for options, how do we actually deliver the stock increase programme? Well, we've not really had options. And so, therefore, I don't feel that as a committee we've done what the Housing Committee has asked us to do. Because, you know, either these options exist, in which case we should all consider them, or they don't exist, in which case, you know, what is the basis of the request from housing? What is the basis of the press release that you put out the other day, condemning Councillor Johnson and Councillor Baker for the reduction in the numbers on the basis of maintaining the spending on the stock increase programme? So, if it's your proposal that we don't actually, that we have discussed as requested, but we don't consider as a committee a way to deliver these things, then I don't think you're honouring the request that's made by the Housing Policy Committee, which actually was supported by all parties.
Thanks, Joe. I think we are. I think we've been quite clear that we would go down the borrowing route, and we believe that there's headroom to borrow in there by a number of issues that we've addressed in the repair service, etc., the money being spent. And that's why the amendments at full council to this budget will be put forward by the parties. Now, I understand that you didn't want to insource, that you kind of outsource, and your party's been very vocal for numbers of years on stock transfer. I get all of that. But I think the issues right from the beginning is that we've been asked to consider. I think we've highlighted where we want to see that. We want more technical advice from finance, because we can put that and show where we think there's an opportunity to increase the stock programme. Now, I think, through the opportunity, we've asked questions of officers to get to a point where we feel comfortable to note this and note the recommendations, but for the amendments to go to full council and to then discuss, and a vote of all 84 councillors will then make a decision which avenue they want to go down, and that's quite clear. So I think as a committee, I think we have done what the Housing Committee has asked us to do, which is to explore, which is we have done. I think what we need to do now, as groups, is to be able to go to full councillors, 84 councillors, to take a view of where those choices are. Now, the choices may be to be at standstill, or it may be to invest in stock. I see Councillor Grocutt, but that's where I think we've got to now. So, you know, I'm quite happy to debate that. I'll just bring Julie in and then I'll come back to you. Is that okay, Joe?
Thank you, Chair. We've obviously been asked to look at the 4 points, but point C says, request that the following matters be considered by the Strategy and Resources Policy Committee when approving the HRA business plan priorities. Well, I think we've decided that we're not approving it, we are just sending it forward. So I don't know if there's some sort of technical amendment that we need there so that we can say that we are, when we are noting it, so should that also be when we are noting we have considered these issues? And then I think it comes back to the Chair's point in relation to having considered them, we can all go away and think about them and decide what, if any, amendments we then need to bring to full council so that all members have the ability to discuss them, because for me this is a really important issue. You know, hands up somebody who doesn't have council properties in their ward. You know, we're all invested in this, and so probably full council is the best place for us to be properly considering all of that. I just hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, I take that point. It seems to me that what we're doing here, and yes, we're changing the word from approve to agree to submit or whatever it is. It doesn't sound like a massive distinction to myself, but that's what we're doing. But what we're doing in this committee is exactly what you've condemned Councillor Johnson and Councillor Baker for the Housing Committee having done. And therefore, if this committee under your leadership is going to do exactly the same thing, perhaps you owe Councillor Johnson and Councillor Baker an apology.
Councillor Lodge?
I think just in the questions that I put through and the points I was making, I don't consider it appropriate that we've arrived at a position that we need 3,000 plus new properties, council house properties, and then we come up with a business plan that says we drop that down. And I think I thought I was quite clear in saying that's working it the wrong way. We need to understand how to achieve that rather than cutting it down. We need how to achieve it. And so there are things in there that I would like more information from officers. I think we have considered it, we have asked the questions, and I think we've sort of put the information out there that suggests that we do need to be looking at different ways of doing things. If they can achieve it in other authorities where they're investing billions into their housing stock, not just in Bristol but in other authorities up and down the country, then perhaps we need to be looking at how they're managing to do that. And I think we have considered maintaining the stock increase programme. I certainly have, and I think you know, it's quite clear that we're happy that we need to invest in the repairs programme and looking at further investment in retrofitting. So we have considered those things in there. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Brian. As far as I'm concerned, I'm comfortable that these have been considered. There is a difference, and as I said right at the beginning, this is about choices. And the 84 councillors at full council will make that decision. I'll be quite interested to see your amendment, if you put one in, and certainly Douglas's party's amendment also. So, I mean, for us, I think it has been considered. And again, as I say in the Constitution, it is for this committee to submit and to note the working through. Now, we may not agree with what's in that budget, that's fine. But that's democracy, and I look forward to the 84 councillors that will have any comments on the HRA on the 20th of February. On that, I will put the recommendations that we have seen to the committee, and can I see all those in favour? Any against? If not, thank you very much, and thank you, Janet, for your time, much appreciated. The next item on the agenda is item 7. So I take it that we're now pausing.
Yes, Chair, we just need to formally go into part 2 of this.
Okay, so we'll pause the webcast and then ask Greg to... Well, thanks everybody for today's meeting. Really is appreciated. I think we've had a good thorough debate, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks. Bye. Safe journey.